Hello, and welcome to the Motley Crew Anime Review. I am your host, Mobus.
And I'm Andrew.
Bob.
Yes.
Stop doing the voice. I swear to God. We're not going to kick this off with you doing the voice.
It's my announcer thing. Okay, for our first week, we picked the show Skullman, filled with superheroes, monsters, and all-around crazy plots, including cults and murders.
Sounds fun, right? Yeah, that's what we thought too.
Thanks.
Oh, man. That's where they get you. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay. So, I guess our first thing is to talk about, plot?
I guess, brief overall summary.
Okay. The plot is essentially there is a, bunch of vicious killings in a remote city, and the leading suspect is an urban legend called the Skullman.
Ooh.
And he wears an ascot, which kind of makes him about 50 times less cool than
I don't know. The ascot actually was a lot cooler than it should have been.
The costume looks really cool.
Every time I see it, I think Freddie Jones. I just want it to be orange.
Ignore him. It was a cool ascot.
The costume's cool overall.
I think that's a redundant statement.
So this story kind of follows a detective, not a detective,
He's
a
reporter, a paparazzi who comes to the city in order to investigate the Skullman and get a big scoop. He's joined by a really annoying ass girl, and
that's kind of true. She's a photographer, so she ends up kind of becoming his partner in this whole thing, and together they try to unveil this large web of intrigue between what's going on with the city and cults and things that are going on.
Skullman and monsters and weird shit.
They try to connect everything.
Yeah.
And unveil this conspiracy.
So what do we think?
Anyway, so pretty much the main character, the paparazzi guy, I don't remember his name because it wasn't important.
Well, let's talk about the plot a little bit, because we talked about what it is. Let's talk about how it held our interest and shit like that.
So honestly, in my opinion, this has a lot of cool things going for it. You got this badass masked character, the Skullman. You have people turning into monsters. You have a complete conspiracy theory that goes through the whole city and to huge depths, both in the law and in the shadows. So there was a lot that they could have played with.
Yeah, it sounded good on paper, I think. I mean, you hear, Skull Rider-esque vigilante who's fucking killing things and monsters and shit, and it's like, whoa!
You had little angels versus demons kind of thing. You had cult conspiracies and
it sounds kind of like mystery thriller.
And one man's trying to find the truth.
And unfortunately, thriller is the one word that does not describe this in any way because it
in no sense.
They even had this cool little backstory about there was this company, and it was owned by this man, and they killed this man, and his son was murdered, and that the Skullman might be him beyond the grave committing these crimes.
And that was brought up, and then they talked about it for like an episode or two, and then it was completely dropped, never really brought up again. There were just so many ways that they could have gone with this thing and made it really cool, and they didn't. It ended up just being a whole bunch of like copy and pasted almost fan fiction stuck together, and it just the plot rambled. It didn't make any sense. It was really convoluted and hard to understand.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
and one more thing that the show absolutely loves to do is introduce some kind of side character that ends up always looking just like another character they already have established, which is kind of stupid. And then 2 episodes later, after giving them the barest minimum of background, they kill them off. And they always act like the audience is supposed to go, no, not
what's his name?
John, why him? You don't care. You really don't care about any of these side characters that get killed off, and it just ruins the atmosphere.
They also draw back to character backgrounds that you really don't see all that much. It's established very quickly, like, these characters were in the same orphanage growing up. Okay, that's supposed to be a big thing. It was very underdeveloped that way.
Really quickly, I want to talk about tone, because I mentioned this to you. I felt as though it was like the opener. You see the opener, and it's all dark and gritty with animation with this that looks like grainy footage, and Skullman beating the shit out of like demonic hellspawn, and you're like, okay, this is going to be kind of a dark, almost superhero-esque story with thriller aspects thrown in. I felt like they didn't know what they wanted to do, because at times they had mystery elements, which were pretty damn boring.
At the beginning, it was really kind of set up for a mystery kind of thing.
Yeah.
With the whole paparazzi and his photographer.
Then it had elements of thrillers where and
people were dying,
and it was dark, gritty shit. And then you had elements of comedy thrown in there,
and
almost slapstick
at the
comedy
worst times too.
Yeah, at the worst, and you know the sidekick character, the photographer, gal.
We'll get to her later.
Yeah, but she was just there to be, you know, adorable, I guess, by the Japanese ideal, and also to be funny, I guess.
To her thing, she did have a connection to a bigger part of the story a little later on.
Yes, but I'm just saying that the tone overall felt really... It felt like they were trying not to be too many things, but they were trying to just go like, oh, hey, we should throw this in here to capture this market. But it still reeked of laziness. It didn't feel like they were really trying to develop any single one. It was like, oh, these other successful shows have comedy like this in them. We should have comedy like this. It felt like a marketing thing. And because of that, the tone was just inconsistent as hell.
And because of that, it felt very... It made everything feel very meandering. It was just wandering about a lot of the time.
Everything it did was really watered down. And
by the end of 20-minute episodes, felt like hour-long movies to me. It was a struggle to get through. Well, we've mentioned the characters. Why don't we dive right into them?
So, main character, paparazzi dude. Like I said, don't remember his name because you really don't need to. They're not unimportant, and really the thing is he's the most likable character out of everyone there.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of got that, you know, like cocky, arrogant charm to him, and they actually did a fairly decent job at that. Later on, he starts to lose that as everything becomes all serious. But besides that, I actually didn't hate him as a character.
Yeah,
I didn't hate him, but I did feel as though I'd seen him before.
Yeah. He wasn't original.
He reminded me. The way he looked and a little bit of how he acted, kind of like Gumshoe off of the Phoenix Wright.
Gumshoe,
he kind of reminded me of that he would get aggravated on little things and just...
Which was kind of funny because then there was another Gumshoe character later that ended up he being his like rival. But
yeah, and so there was that. The character, he had his moments. He's definitely not the worst I've seen in this character. He didn't bring anything new to the table.
Bring anything new. Though, being fair, the original manga for this was written in, what, the 80s?
It was written in the early 70s.
Okay, so I can kind of be a little bit forgiving on that. Considering it is adapting an older work, but I still feel as though if you're adapting it for a modern age, you definitely want to add something to that character to make him distinct, because he just didn't stand out.
Yeah, the thing was he wasn't utterly unlikable, and he was likable at times, but I forgot about him the moment he left the screen, and really the moment I stopped watching this show.
Definitely.
He had those moments of, oh, I'm going to be nice here, but then could be a complete asshole here, too. And there was a little bit of flip-flop with the character in some aspects. They were very minor, and like I said, it's not the worst I've seen it done. I've seen other characters that just like, this does not make any conceivable sense why you're acting like this now and like this later, so...
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to the sidekick.
So you have this female
also don't
character.
remember her name.
So the main female lead of this is, we've kind of described it as a female version of the assistant in Professor Layton.
Except the assistant in Professor Layton didn't make me want to kill everything.
Like, literally, you take this assistant, make it just switch its genders, make it like, I don't know, 4 years older, not even really that old. She wants to be like, 16 or something.
She was old,
It was kind of like really lame jailbait.
Also...
And she was like, at times they tried to make her sexy, at times they tried to make her comical and childish, and it just didn't make any sense with her in terms of, like, there were parts where she was just like, oh no, he doesn't see me as a woman. I was like, I don't think anyone sees you as a woman.
I honestly thought she was a boy. I'm not even joking. Well, when I first heard her voice, I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. She sounds a little too feminine. Oh, that's a woman.
Plus, there's other...
Okay.
There's other things that they do with her. It's just...
Well, thank God, because now I can justify being turned on. I mean, what?
You could kind of tell that they're for the sake of the plot, they were trying to push the two main characters into each other. They kind of conflict with each other just right. That it's not sexual tension, but you could honestly easily tell that they're like, oh, this is gonna be some point of their no matter how they cram it together. These two are gonna end up liking each other. For Christ's sake, she had one of her character things is she carried a camera that had an old photograph of a childhood friend, which this is where it comes into the art style of the characters looking damn similar.
The same.
So they're literally this guy character that she has in
Move over one piece. Someone else can make identical character designs.
They pulled a really lame Bleach with the whole, Ichigo, that one dude that was just a blonde-haired Ichigo, and that a lame version of Bleach.
Dude.
Do I need to emphasize this anymore?
Dude, we promised we would leave Bleach at the door. We ain't talking about that here.
Moving on.
Literally, I was confused for a while. More like, does she know him from the past, and for some reason he's not making that connection? So I'm like, okay. But then you find out that's another character who she looks, like we said, she looks at the oldest 17 and at the youngest 13, 14. And this picture she has of her looks like it was 2 years ago, right? And so she meets this guy again, and she's all like, I was literally confused if she was romantically interested in this guy, or if this guy was her brother that she had a thing for.
Yeah, it was really unclear. And I'm kind of sad that they really felt like they had to push between, Little Miss Jailbait, Professor Layton assistant over here, and the paparazzi dude, because one, I think the paparazzi dude was actually kind of likable. But two, the only times in the entire show I found the assistant chick to be likable was when she was interacting with the paparazzi guy in kind of a partner kind of setting. They had this kind of whole, hey, you don't leave your partner behind. You're not my partner. And it kind of worked. It added a little charm and flair to the show. And it really made it, uncomfortable and awkward when they felt like they needed to, make her a woman in his eyes, and then romantic interest that just wasn't there.
Also,
honestly, I liked her best when she wasn't on screen at all.
I get what Bob's talking about, though, because there'll be times where he'll be like, well, you're my assistant. And she's like, I'm not your assistant, I'm your partner. And then they kind of flip-flop between that. So I'm like, that's kind of
it added
fun
a nice little
quirk.
charm to it,
It's a dynamic, which is, it's better than no dynamic at all.
Yeah.
And it was a lot better than every other dynamic this show was made up of.
Yeah.